What's up, Summoners? Welcome back to another Pro Guides video. My name is Nathan Ng, and today we'll be talking about our predictions for the worst champions going into patch 12.7. It can be really hard to understand how different buffs and nerfs are going to affect the meta. Sometimes a seemingly huge nerf just really brings a god tier champion down to the S tier and they're still plenty OP. Other times what seems like a minor 2 base AD reduction just causes a champion to drop off the rift. So we're here to steer you away from what we think are going to be the worst champions in each role this patch. We'll be starting things out in the top lane with Jace. Jace, along with the other 3 champions nerfed on this patch, is a pick that does really well, or is at least pretty popular at the highest levels of play. When played perfectly, he's a super safe pick, able to win or go even in almost all lanes, while also being super safe against ganks. Basically, he's a no-risk, high-reward pick if the player using him has immaculate mechanics and wave control. That being said, people in Diamond and Under do not have those skill sets, no offense, and he was already a pretty risky pick in those elos. Prior to the nerfs on this patch, Jace was around a C tier pick. Now with him being even squishier in the early game, you're a lot more vulnerable when you make mistakes, and I think he easily becomes a D tier champion. Auction fills a pretty similar role to Jace, but with a more consistent laning phase, better roaming, and a much bigger impact in late game teamfights with his revive mechanic. Plus, Auction actually has good consistent damage output to get through the beefy frontliners. There's really no point in picking Jace when he exists. Avoiding the champions on this list is a good starting point ranking up, but if you're actually serious about climbing, you should check out ProGuides.com. We offer courses from all your favorite streamers and pros like Core JJ, Aframu, and Xmithy to really help you understand how to play your role. And if you want a more personalized experience, we have coaches available 24/7 ready to help you guys become the best. Our coaches are top tier players that spent years climbing the solo queue ladder to get where they are now, and they're ready to share everything that they've learned with you. Find our site down in the description box below, and let's get back on topic, shall we? The other top laner that we have for you this week is Renekton. While Renekton is meta, he becomes one of the most contested picks in pro play. His kit makes him a super strong lane bully. With him having both a point and click stun and huge burst, you can force dives easily against any foe. The result is him always being a pick or ban, since he's a guaranteed winning lane. Obviously, Riot likes to balance around pro play, so they nerfed him again and again to the point that he's barely even worth picking at that level of play. Looks like Crocs are now out of style. Of course, that made him a completely awful pick in solo queue. Renekton can still be used to force dives with a coordinated jungler, but since junglers are pretty unreliable in solo queue, that doesn't exactly make him a reliable pick. Rather, what ends up happening is you shove in the wave because every time you trade with the Q, you hit minions. Then you end up being an easy gank target for the enemy jungler, and you never get a chance to snowball early, and you end up being a pretty useless champion outside of the laning phase. Taking a look now at the jungle, the first champion that we'll be looking at is Hecarim. On 12.6, Riot nerfed Hecarim because nobody liked dealing with a champion that can build full tank and still do a ridiculous amount of damage. It doesn't feel fair to be ran down and one-shot by somebody that you can't really kill unless you're playing Vayne. Hecarim can still snowball pretty hard in very specific circumstances, but he's nowhere as consistent as he was before. If you build him full tank, he does a lot less damage, so he's more of an engage bot than anything else. If you build him full damage, you'll obviously have a lot more kill threat, but you also will be completely melted in fights. Personally, I really like playing Hecarim, but I'm really glad to see the stupid tank build being nerfed into the dirt. I'd really like to see Riot buff him in a way that specifically makes AD Bruiser Hecarim strong, since that's the healthiest way for him to be played. Lee Sin is the second champion that we'll be talking about today that's being nerfed because of how popular of a pick he is at higher levels of play. That being said, I think this was a really stupid decision. In Masters Plus, Lee Sin was just under a 53% win rate. Meanwhile, Rek'Sai has been a top tier pick for months and had over a 56% win rate last patch. Then in lower elos, Lee Sin drops down under the 50% line, while Rek'Sai remains one of the very best performers in the role. I get that Lee is picked more, but still, a champion can't be #1 performing champion in all elos and still be completely ignored. Anyway, we already advised against picking Lee in Platinum and Under last patch, and with these changes, that's even more so the case. With super clean mechanics, his playmaking is still pretty good, but if your mechanics are that good, you wouldn't fall into that category. Next up for the mid lane, the third champion being nerfed this patch is Ryze. Ryze was already one of the absolute worst picks in the game when you look at the champions on their meta roles. Actually, even when you compared it to the crazy off-meta picks like Yuumi mid or Janna jungle, he's barely any better than them. Yeah, Yuumi mid. He has consistently sat somewhere around the 45% win rate for months, or even years at this point. He's just not a viable solo queue pick. In fact, if you go and look at his pro play stats, even those aren't that impressive. While he's the second highest presence champion right behind Twisted Fate, when he is picked, he has a 48% win rate in the top pro play regions for all of Season 12. If the literal best players in the world can't even make him work well, why would you even try picking him up in solo queue? The only thing that Ryze has going for him is that point and click CC, but there are plenty of other champions that have CC that can actually use it to get leads and use those leads to get a lot better. Look at Annie and Pantheon for example. They're both super snowbally with good CC and burst and actual solo kill potential once they get ahead. They spike super hard at a single item rather than just needing to wait for 3 to come online. Plus, they can actually flash and insta-stun a target and then blow them up with a huge burst combo. Meanwhile, even if you flash with Ryze, you have to wait for your E to land before the W can even root that target. Out of all the champions that we regularly feature on the Worst Champions series, Ryze is probably the absolutely worst pick that you should be staying away from. While Lucian has become one of the best picks in the bot lane meta due to the blanket nerf on marksman as a whole, he's still an absolutely awful solo pick. He's definitely really annoying to deal with early, and in a total vacuum, he could bully his way into a lead for a 1v1, but League isn't a 1v1 game. It just takes a single gank to relieve pressure for his opponents for you to lose momentum with Lucian. The thing is, he doesn't really quite have the range to just sit back and bully. You have to dash in and trade on your opponent if you actually want to win the lane, but doing that leaves you wide open to dying to those ganks. And when you die once, the game is basically over. Almost all meta mid laners have pretty high impact and all-in potential post 6, and being a squishy marksman makes Lucian a pretty easy target. You end up being farmed, and once behind, Lucian is an absolutely worthless pick with no utility to offer and no way to get back into the game. Moving things down to the bot lane, we have Zeri. She's the last champion being nerfed on this patch due to how good she was in high elo and pro play, and this is the one that I actually kind of agree with. At those levels of play, she's probably one of the best picks after all this post-release nerfs. And honestly, even after this huge set of nerfs on this patch, I don't really see Zeri fully going away. I think she's still going to be a good pick if you build her right and have insane mechanics. That being said, she obviously isn't going to be great anywhere else outside of the top of the ladder. Not only does a Zeri player need to have mechanics that you aren't going to have in Diamond and Under, but you also probably will get some carpal tunnel. Zeri is super OP when fighting with her ultimate up, but when it's down, she's borderline useless. So, you need to find a team that knows how to stall when it's down, and more importantly, how to force a fight and commit to it when it's available. There's nothing more painful than a half-hearted engage where Zeri's team baits her into using her ultimate, then backs out and lets it fizzle before she can stack it back up. Trust me, commitment issues get you nowhere in League of Legends and in life. Like I said before, literally all 4 champions that have been nerfed on this patch happened because of pro play. And while I can see why that happens, I still think Riot is a little bit out of touch with how things are going overall. What about champions that affect the 99.9% of us? And that brings us to today's question of the day. What's a champion that Riot needs to buff or nerf due to how they do in low elo? Let us know your answers in the comments down below, and let's get back on topic. The other ADC that you probably don't want to play is a Felios. I personally love this champion, but he's just in such a bad spot right now. He's too weak early, losing lane hard to other hyperscalers, and he doesn't really even outscale those picks. He's just hard outclassed by Jinx, Twitch, Vayne, and Kog'Maw. I know the 200-year memes are funny to bring up, but there's actually almost never been a time where Felios didn't have a positive win rate. Like me in my dating life, I think Riot needs to give him some love. Now for our supports, the first champion that we'll be looking at is Vex. We've literally been saying it since her release. Vex is not supposed to be played as a support. This isn't just saying that you need to play champions in the role that Riot wants. I'm just saying that her entire kit absolutely only works as a mid laner. In that role, you can win or at least go even in most matchups. Even when you're not super fed, you have at least farm to buy items and burst people down outside of the laning phase. But as a support, you obviously don't really have the extra income from farming. So if you don't snowball insanely hard, you're just completely useless once the game reaches the middle stages. A burst mage that can't burst down targets isn't exactly great after all. Her only other selling point is having some CC for engaging fights and making picks, but there are other supports meant specifically for that, like Nautilus and Blitzcrank. Finishing off our list, we have yet another off-meta pick in Malphite. Despite him having a 48% win rate across all elos, people love to try to make him work as a support. And it really doesn't make any sense, because he's perfectly fine as a top laner, where he can easily make it through most lanes, and actually has the income to become an unkillable frontliner. The only single useful thing that Malphite support offers is his ultimate. Pre-6, your ADC is basically forced to 1v2 the lane. Odds are, by the time you actually have your ultimate, both you and your ADC are poked down and can't even try to force a fight. Making your ADC unable to farm or fight your opponents is 1. Gonna tilt them pretty hard, and 2. Ensure that enemy ADC is able to carry fights a lot harder later into the game. So stop trying to force this as a weird niche cheesy pick and just pick something that actually works. And that about wraps things up for our 10 worst champions on patch 12.7. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you sub so you never miss out on our meta guides and you're always in the loop on what the best picks are. Remember, let us know a champion that Riot needs to buff or nerf around low elo in the comments down below. And one last thing, don't forget to check out our Discord in the description box as well, where you can go ahead and discuss League further or just hang out and be part of the community. I can't wait to see you guys back in the next video, but until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and have a wonderful day.